Or if they need to come in, just because it's easier that way. I'll point them that way, hopefully. Or if you guys see them, say, come that way. My name is Dr. Deborah Langheldt, and how many of you, is this the first time you've seen me speak? Okay, great. Welcome, welcome. Hopefully this will be worth your while here. I'm a naturopathic doctor, and I'll talk about that just a little bit because we have a lot to cover today. These slides are available for anyone who wants a copy. If you put your email here, you'll get them. So a lot of the slides I have here at the beginning, the first 5 or 8 slides, are for your reference because people have a lot of questions about naturopathic medicine and what it is. And so you can look at those slides in depth on your own because we're never going to cover everything if I go over that. I am a licensed primary care physician, but not in the state of Tennessee. So in the state of Tennessee, I can only work as a natural health consultant because Tennessee does not allow naturopathic doctors to be licensed. So so this is for informational purposes only. I am a certified health education specialist, which is recognized in the state, and I have my master's in public health. So I am fully qualified to chat with you today, but I am not a physician in this state. Okay, so this is more for your reference of where I am licensed. Tennessee, as you can see, is dark blue, which means advocacy initiatives are ongoing, and hopefully someday I will be able to be a licensed primary care physician here. Okay, so disclaimer, I already said it, this is for educational purposes only. Please review with your primary care physician anything that you think, because we're all different, and you might have a unique circumstance that makes some of the things I'm talking about may or may not apply to you. Okay, so we're going to just rush through that. All those, like I said, those slides are for your reference for later, so we can just dive right into weight optimization. Okay, so this has been a passion and sort of a hobby of mine, if you will, for, most of my life, mainly because I've been an athlete for a lot of my life, and part of being an athlete, I've had to learn how to slim down very quickly. It's like, how do I get lean really quick for a race across America or something like that? And so, I've tried everything, and I'm going to go through a lot, but there's too much for me to cover today, so I'm going to try to hit on the high points, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so this is just some statistics, and you guys, I'm sure, have heard all of this, and you're going to want to get to the meat, so I'm going to go through them quickly. But basically, the United States is getting more and more obese. And that's all this is showing is the trend towards more and more obesity. We're in an area that is, we're going to have over 60% prevalence. That means over 60% of the population is going to be deemed obese by definition in the state of Tennessee by 2030. That's sort of scary, right? So we need to figure out what's going on and see if we can, reverse these trends. You can go online. If you go to Google, you can type a BMI calculator. And there's tons of them online, and they're fun to use. And you type in your height and your weight. So that's me, 5'4", 118 pounds. My BMI is 20.3, and that looks like me right now. And so that would make me in the normal weight category, right? So, because I'm, now I can get down below 18 pretty easy if I work at it, and I'll explain how. And it's about training your physiology, but we'll get there. This is what a standard body fat range is for adults. This I'm not as concerned with. I'm more worried about, your health and where the fat is on your body. Is it a visceral fat? Is it a fat on your hips or the inside of your legs? Or is it like, fat in different areas, it has a different effect on your health. And there's even different kinds of fat. There's white fat and brown fat, and we're going to talk about that as well. Okay, so this is me not too long ago. It's right before medical school. And this is me not even trying to slim up. I wasn't even trying to, but I was doing, I was playing around with weight optimization techniques because I was doing talks at local gyms on how to optimize your weight in Maryland, right? And so I was trying to use these techniques on myself to see if they work. So we're going to talk about all these things. This is sort of an outline, so we don't need to go into it a whole lot. Okay, so first I'm going to talk about what weight optimization is not about. What weight loss is not about. And this might surprise you. These 5 things here might surprise you. It's not about exercising more. It's not about genetics, okay? There is genetic predispositions, and I'm going to explain that. But my family, I'm going to show you pictures. Severe obesity I have a very high genetic predisposition for, severe obesity. And I know this because I've done my own genomic analysis on my DNA, and I'll show you pictures of my family on both sides. And you'll see what I'm talking about. So severe obesity definitely runs in family. And yes?
Is all this going to be on the slide?
Absolutely.
Right,
This is the
you.
slideshow right here. And so just because you might have a genetic predisposition in your family does not mean you are, in trouble forever. You can definitely change things. And because what we're learning is it's less about our genes and more about epigenetics, which is the genes you turn on and the genes you turn off. And you can control that with many things we're going to talk about. Okay, and then it's not about a lack of discipline, because just like breathing is not really in our control. It's sort of one of those weird functions where we can control it some when we think about it, but most of the time we're not controlling it. Weight is the same way, and what we eat is the same way. It's not about discipline, it's hormonally controlled, it's hormonal. Eating fat does not make you fat. So in fact, when I really want to slim up, I eat mostly fat. Is my major nutrient is fat. Okay, so it's also not about calories in, calories out. You're going to see this everywhere, all over the place. We've all heard it, but we all intuitively know that that can't be true, right? Because 3 bites of broccoli is going to be way different than 3 bites of pizza, but they might have the same amount of calories. So we all intuitively know that this is not true, but it's been proven. And this is a organization called the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, and this is a population-based data collection service that you do big statistical analysis on. So when I was getting my MPH, I used the NHANES data to do all kinds of analyses on the population, and they have proven there's no correlation between caloric consumption and weight gain. That's insane. That's not what we've all been taught, right? So the calories in, calories out model, it's a myth. It's not true. Okay, so we're going to keep going, and okay, so here's once again just another piece of proof. So not only did the data on a population level prove that it's no correlation, but there's another thing that was called the Biology of Human Starvation. It was a book that was written based on a study. And it was a huge study called the Minnesota study, and they basically took a bunch of people and they reduced their caloric intake in half, from 3,000 calories to 1,500 calories. That's a huge caloric restriction, right? Okay? And what happened? What were the results of the study? Well, basically, to summarize, their body adapted and changed to the new caloric amount. Okay, which means it didn't matter, because yes, they did lose weight, but they had way more other effects. In other words, their body became more efficient at using the calories they had, and their physiology changed into starvation mode, right? Which is extremely dangerous and unhealthy. So I am very against caloric restriction. I don't believe it. There are studies that say mild caloric restriction, which is less than 30%, will increase longevity. They're now proving that false, that that's not exactly true. And so we're not going to argue about that right now. But from my personal opinion, and helping coach people with weight loss at gyms all over the place, caloric restriction doesn't work, okay? And it's very dangerous. But yes, their metabolic rate dropped by 40%, which means they have you want to raise your metabolism, you don't want to lower it, right? So their strength decreased by 21, their heart rate decreased, the stroke volume of their heart, their body temperature dropped, their physical endurance dropped by 50%, right? They have lack of basically all they could think about was food, and they even dreamed about food, right? And their blood pressure decreased, they couldn't concentrate, their hair fell out, their nails became brittle. That was the results of the study, right? And so what does it do? What does caloric restriction do? It makes you cold, tired, lethargic, makes you age faster, makes you irritable, depressed, and hungry. That's what caloric restriction does, so I don't recommend it. And it trains your body to not burn fat, which is exactly the opposite of what we're all trying to do. We want to train our bodies to burn fat, right? Not to train it to hold on, right? So you can't put your body in starvation mode if you're trying to burn fat. Okay, so it also affects future generations. They've shown this when there has been famines in different places, and people who've survived Nazi concentration camps, that future generations now become obese because the physiology changed to hold on to fat, right? So you don't want to go into starvation mode. This is what caloric restriction should be out for most all of us. And then I mentioned the mild caloric restriction extends lifespan, but the studies even claim it's poorly understood, and they're finding now that it has more to do with the timing of your feeding than the actual caloric restriction. So that's what we're going to talk about, okay? All right, so this is me just trying to prove to you the myths and why they're false. So this is another slide that I was going to go into a lot of depth on, but we have so much to cover, I'm not going to. This is me proving to you that when you lower your calories and you do a caloric restriction, all your hormones change. It causes an immediate hormonal response that's not good. Okay, so calorie surplus is yellow. You have your insulin sensitivity goes up, which is good. That's what you want, right? You know, calorie deficit, your insulin sensitivity goes down. So cortisol, when you have a calorie deficit, your stress hormone goes up. That's cortisol. Cortisol makes you fat. I'm going to talk about that. You got to get your cortisol down if you want to keep pounds off, right? So caloric restriction immediately makes your cortisol go up, right? So it's exactly. I could go through each one of these, your testosterone, your thyroid hormone, everything gets messed up when you do caloric restriction, and it trains your hormones in the exact opposite direction that you want. That's useful. Okay, so now this one is not about exercising more. So I'm going to show you a little clip real quick. So just give me a second here to find it for you, because it's worth watching the first minute or two. Let's see here, let's go back over here. Let's see here. Let me get this right here, and
lose weight, we join a
here we go.
We have this idea that if we want to lose weight, we join a gym on January 1st, we start working out regularly, and eventually we slim down. Well, here's some bad news.
I read more than 60 studies on this, and it turns out exercise is actually pretty useless when it comes to weight loss.
Dr. Kevin Hall at the National Institutes of Health has done some of the most important studies on exercise and weight loss.
We need to rebrand exercise. Exercise isn't a weight loss tool per se. It's excellent for health. It's probably the best single thing that you can do other than stopping smoking to improve your health. But don't look at it as a weight loss tool.
Exercise will definitely help you live a longer, happier life. It's just not the best way to lose weight. And the reason it has to do with how our bodies use energy.
You may not realize it, but physical activity is actually a tiny component of your daily energy burn.
There are three main ways our bodies burn calories.
These include your resting metabolism, so that's how much energy your body burns just for its basic functioning, just to keep you alive, basically. The other part of energy expenditure is a thermic effect of food, and that's just how much energy is required to break food down in your body. The third part of energy expenditure is physical activity.
For most people, physical activity, that's any movement you do, only accounts for about 10 to 30% of energy use.
Okay, so this is a great YouTube video that I have the link for inside the presentation. I welcome you all to watch it in its entirety when you get a chance. But the point I was trying to make here is, because I am a huge, let me see if I can get back to my slideshow and start from current slide. Okay. The point I'm trying to make, and I love exercise. I am a huge exercise fanatic, but I've also learned that it's not the best way to lose weight. Right? Now, I think I can do a whole series of lectures on how important exercise is for 1,000 things, but if weight loss is your goal and what you're trying to do, maybe you can redirect some of your effort in a different way to lose weight. Does that make sense? Like maybe instead of spending 3 hours at the gym, maybe you do some other stuff like focusing on your sleep and some other things that I'm going to talk about that will have a much better effect, or they'll be more effective at helping you lose weight. Okay, so that's exercise. So here, this was from the slide, and it's important that we understand that no matter how much physical activity you do, it doesn't even compare to your resting metabolism, right? We're going to talk about how you can retrain and reset your resting metabolism, which is going to have a much greater effect than increasing your physical activity, right? We want our metabolism to be retrained. Okay, so this is a picture I put in here to show you that genetics, it's not about genetics, okay? This is my family right here, okay? That's my first cousin and my first cousin's son. This is my other first cousin, that's my aunt. These are my family, right? And that's what I should look like, by the way. And that's what my parents should look like, and they don't. And it's because I'm very proud of my parents. They don't look like either sides of their family, but I also have them on, the Deb Lang held, weight program, right? So, and we all have to adhere to it really religiously. Otherwise, we will look like the rest of our family on both sides of the family, which are having lots of problems. So I'm very proud of my parents. They help out a lot. But this is a picture I want to show you before medical school. I use my own things I'm about to share with you in this presentation. I can lean up really quickly if I I choose to. So like right now, I'm not trying to be lean. This is my normal set point. It's about 118, 120 pounds, 5'4". That's where my body likes to be when I follow everything I'm talking about, and I do not do excessive exercise. In fact, these days, my mom can tell you all that I'm probably exercising less than I have ever, right? I'm trying to focus on my business and some other things, and so I do a little bit of moderate exercise, walking and some things, but I'm not in the gym. I'm not a gym rat whatsoever, okay? And, but I can slim down to this very quickly using the outline we're going to talk about. And it takes about 3 months for me to start getting slim. Other people, it might take you a year because you have to get your body flexible. There's a switch to burn fat or to burn glucose, and you have to like exercise that switch and get your body metabolically flexible. So it quickly goes from burning glucose to burning fat, and you have to make that metabolically flexible switch happen, and you have to train your body to be metabolically flexible. Okay, so these are pictures of me. Just so you know, I'm a case in point, and I've had a lot of luck with other people too, people I've coached. Okay, this is another slide that you might find interesting. It's not all about sugar, and my parents and everyone who knows me has heard this a million times. Sugar's poison. I say that to everybody. Sugar's poison. That's what I think. That's my opinion, and I can give you a whole reasons why. Especially added sugar is poison. But interestingly, it's not the whole picture with regards to obesity. Right? With regards to obesity, it's not the whole picture. If you look, we started, our added sugars going down starting in around 1999, right? But look, obesity keeps going up, right? So it's not all about sugar, although sugar's poison, don't start eating sugar, okay? But you know, it is, the point I'm making is, a lot of times, what we think is causing our obesity is not what's causing it. It's hormones, primarily hormones, and some other things we'll talk about. Okay, so this is just more to prove the point that it's a combination of things, but our wheat consumption's gone up, our sugar consumption's gone up, but even when they went down, our obesity is still going up, although there's a lag and it looks like it's starting to go down. So it's much more complex than this, so this is probably one of the most important slides in the whole presentation. I thought about how to make it more interesting, like should I put some pictures or whatever. I haven't got there yet, but I consider this probably one of the high point slides in this whole presentation. There's a couple more too that are good, but this is one of the best. This is what weight loss is about right here. These are the main items, and I'm going to go through each one of them now. And good, we're doing great in time. We need to adjust our homeostatic set point. That's our body has this weight that it wants to go to. We have to figure out how to retrain that set point down. And that's all about that resting metabolic rate that they were talking about before, and how to get that to go down, and we'll talk about it. Also, we need to be flexible, burning fat, burning carbs, burning fat, burning carbs. We have to be exercised at doing that, and our body has to be used to doing it and not resist it, right? Not resist burning fat. We have to maximize the micronutrient content of our food. So micro and macro. So what happens is the micronutrient food is all of our vitamins and minerals. That means if our stomach acid's not working good, we're not getting the nutrients from our food that we should. And a lot of people have hunger cravings because they're basically starving to death. They're not getting nutrients from their food. So you need to heal your stomach if it's not working well, and make sure you're getting maximum nutrients, and then you'll find your hunger cravings start going away. And I brought this just to make sure, like for me personally, I take a little cap full of liquid plant-derived minerals every day. You can do whatever you want, but that's me, that helps my homeostatic set point because it makes me not hungry, because there's something like 91 minerals and stuff, plant-based minerals in here. It tastes really gross. I mean, it's disgusting. But I just try to plug my nose and drink it because I want to make sure I'm getting my maximum nutrients so I don't have any hunger cravings. So you don't, because that's usually when you're feeling hungry, it's because your body's saying, I don't have something I need, right? So it's hard to know. It's really hard to get everything we need from our food these days. So just to help me make sure I get there, I do that. Okay, and if I do a lot of exercise too, like let's say I'm going to go on a big hike, or because occasionally I'll do something crazy, like climb mountains or whatever, and I'll need extra protein, and I know I can't eat enough. There's like no way I can eat that much protein, and we're going to talk about what's enough protein for different activities. And so sometimes I'll use this plant-based protein powder, right? But I only use that if I know I'm exercising a lot, like going on some huge hikes and stuff, and I need the extra protein. And it has a lot of good minerals in it as well. Yes?
Before you start or after?
So that's interesting, and I have a whole lecture on nutrition optimization for exercise, okay? Literally, because I coached big teams, you know, who were doing endurance sports, on how to, what's the ratio of nutrients that you eat before the race, or before the exercise, during the exercise, and after the exercise. So that's a very complex question, but I will say, normally I do this during and after, but not before, okay? Okay, so, continuing through, so we got, and then you gotta get your macronutrients, so that's fat, proteins, and carbs, right? You know, those are the three macronutrients: fat, protein, and carbs. And that's all of our food, is one of those three. And making sure you eat the right ratio to max for weight loss at the right time of day is critical for you to train your physiology to be fat adapted, which means flexible, right? And if you do it the wrong way, you're sending all the wrong signals to your body, and you'll never burn fat. Even if you're eating low calories, and even if you're doing everything else right, if you don't eat your macronutrients in the right ratio at the right time of day, it's going to cause problems. And hopefully I'll get back to that soon. But okay, and then there's other things like promoting angiogenesis. So anti-angiogenesis means, so most all of every single tissue in our body needs a blood supply. As soon as you don't get a blood supply, it becomes necrotic and it dies, right? Now some tissue in our body doesn't have hardly any vasculature. That means it doesn't have very many blood vessels, and that would be your meniscus in your knee and your ACL. And when you have joint issues and you have a meniscal tear and it has to then heal, it takes a long time to heal because there's hardly any blood vessels that go there to those joints, okay? Very low vasculature. But adipose tissue, that's our fat, right? Really highly vascularized, a lot of blood vessels supporting the fatty tissue. And we have found, and I'll show you some other stuff, that you can eat certain foods that promote anti-angiogenesis that will help lower your fat storage, which is fantastic. So we'll talk about that. Also, inflammation causes weight loss, and the reason why is because it changes your hormones, specifically leptin, which I'm going to talk about. And then you need to have a diverse microbiome. That's going to help with your nutrient absorption and reduce your cravings. And then exercising at the right time and the right way to stimulate weight loss. Okay, so we're going to go through all of these. So how do we adjust our homeostatic weight set point down? Well, we have to increase our basal metabolic rate, that's our resting metabolism. We need to increase thermogenesis if we can, and we need to understand our hormone regulation a little bit. So we're going to go through all this. Okay, so here are, when people say, you know, energy in, energy out, or calories in, calories out, what they're talking about in terms of energy expenditures, this is how we expend energy. So the food we eat hopefully is turned into fuel, and that fuel helps us, you know, sustain our lives. And these are the ways we burn our fuel, okay? And this one is the biggest one right there, our resting metabolic rate. If we can increase that, that's going to lower our homeostatic set point. Yes, physical activity helps, but it's, as we know, it's not as much as you think. And then this is an interesting one right here that I added down here because we've now found in studies that post-exercise oxygen consumption is huge in adjusting your homeostatic set point down. And I'm going to tell you what that is, so don't worry about it. Okay, let's keep going. All right, so this is, you can click on this and read all about it, but it's EPOC, which is your excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. And we found, and I'm going to go into it in a little bit more detail later when I talk about exercise, but there are things we can do, types of exercise we do, will stimulate us to keep burning calories hours after we finish exercising. And cardiovascular work is not it. So doing cardio in the gym is not the way to stimulate this, okay? It's strength training. So lifting weights, right? Okay, right? Doing squats, right? Doing a squat, you know, right? It's lifting heavy weights. And there's also interval training. So the good news is you can do this on a whole body vibration plate, and you can increase your bone density, and you only have to do it for 11 minutes, and I'm going to show you. So this is all the things that it does. It's talking about it. I highly recommend you read this article. It's super fantastic, but it's going to, all this stuff supports what I'm going to tell you why the exercise is that I recommend. okay? So I want to get into the meat of it though. Okay, I talked about hormones, and I was going to talk about each of these hormones, and I'm only going to talk about a couple because, you know, time is of the essence, but the main point here is everything I'm about to tell you in the rest of this presentation is about regulating these hormones in the direction that we want, okay? And so we're gonna, I have one on leptin, so a little video. Let me see if I can find that real quick for you guys. And it's in relation to sleep, because I'm gonna give you guys a bunch of recommendations, and they're all related to
Can a
hormones.
lack of sleep lead to unnecessary weight gain? Unfortunately, that's what the scientific evidence tells us. Part of the reason is due to an imbalance in two key appetite-regulating hormones called leptin and ghrelin. Now, leptin sends a signal of fullness to your brain, so you feel satiated by your food. Ghrelin, on the other hand, does the opposite. It sends a signal of hunger to your brain. And sadly, these two hormones will go in opposite directions when we're not getting enough sleep. Specifically, a lack of sleep will decrease levels of leptin, so you won't feel as satisfied by your meals. You won't feel full. And if that weren't bad enough, levels of ghrelin will actually increase when you're not getting sufficient sleep. So you'll constantly feel hungry and you'll want to eat more. However, it's not just that you want to eat more when sleep gets short. It's also about a change in what you want to eat. In particular, a lack of sleep will shift your preferences towards desiring higher calorie and sugary carbohydrate foods. What's fascinating is that this relationship between sleep and food is a two-way street. We've discovered that eating to excess and also eating a diet that contains high amounts of sugar and low amounts of fiber are all associated with significantly worse sleep quantity and sleep quality. The good news here is that we can think of sleep as a new tool to help regulate our body weight, and as a result, improve our overall health and our wellness.
So this particular gentleman who did this little tiny lecture here is one of my favorite scientists. He, let me give me 2 seconds to get my slideshow started here. He's written a book called Why We Sleep, and I love it. It's an absolutely fantastic book. I've read it like 3 times, and that's saying something because I read a ton, and I took the time to read this one because it will help. He talks about how sleep and the right kind of sleep will also reduce your cognitive decline and all kinds of things. So sleep is something that I'm a huge proponent of, and if you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see a giant, in the 6-part lecture series on sleep, which I highly recommend you listen to understand all the ins and outs of sleep, because it's extremely important. But the main thing is it affects leptin and ghrelin. So for this lecture, I'm only talking about sleep with regards to how it's going to help you lose weight, and it definitely works. It will help you shed pounds without even thinking you're doing anything, and it's mainly because your hormones. Yes?
What's his name?
I can't remember. I should know this. His book is Why We Sleep. Why We Sleep. It's a fantastic book, Why We Sleep, and I just love it. It's worth reading. Everyone should read it. Okay, so let's keep going. I should totally know his name. Oh my gosh. I've recommended this book to everyone. Anyway, okay, so here, this is just a repeat of what he's talking about, and another little added piece of information in here is that leptin is created by your adipose tissue. And so, like, when you start changing the ratio of your adipose tissue in your body, your hormones will automatically start changing and things get easier and easier and easier. And another thing is white adipose tissue is what creates it, not brown. And I'm going to be talking about brown adipose tissue soon. Yes?
His name's Matthew Walker.
Matthew Walker. Thank you very much, Lori. Okay, so we're going to talk about that, but the main thing to remember is sleep. Sleep is huge, it's extremely important because it helps you regulate your leptin and ghrelin, but leptin really. Ghrelin, interestingly, you can do some tricks and some other things, and I call it tricks, but it's just knowing what triggers ghrelin, that's the hunger hormone, and what makes it stop. And so this is just an interesting study that shows just how important leptin is. So they have one mutant mice here who can't produce leptin. Remember, leptin is what makes you feel full. Like, I can't eat another bite, I'm so full, right? That's leptin, right? And so one mouse the only genetic difference is that they can't produce leptin, right? So you wanna be able to feel full. Like you need to be able to say, yeah, I can't eat another bite. You have to be able to feel that way, and sleep is going to help you feel full, okay? All right, so that's an example of there. All right, so, man, I fixed the slide too. Oh well, so anyway, sorry about that. I thought I fixed some slides and then they got, but the main thing is what causes low leptin, meaning not the ability to not feel full. And it's high stress, so cortisol, right? And remember, caloric restriction raises your cortisol, right? Okay, so you don't want to restrict your calories because you're going to be working against yourself. So you want to have low cortisol, high quality sleep. You want to have enough protein, which we're going to talk about, and lower inflammation, regular exercise, that's the proper exercise, which I'm going to talk about. And then genetic predisposition definitely contributes, but you don't have to turn on those genes. Okay, so exercise the right way improves insulin sensitivity, but a study here found that you can increase your leptin levels by 18% by just doing exercise for 30 minutes a day for 12 weeks, and I am going to claim that you can even lower that if you do the right exercise, right? So that's a huge increase in leptin to make you feel full, right? Okay, so how do we increase our leptin naturally? Those are the things. I'm going to go through each one of them, so don't worry about it. Okay, so protein. You want adequate protein. Not only do you want to be eating enough protein, but you want to be digesting your protein. This is extremely important. So when if you remember the beginning of the slideshow, there's a picture of me in my bicycle outfit, and I said I got real lean, right? What was I eating? What was I eating? I ate a ton of food. I mean, I ate so much food you wouldn't believe it because I was exercising a lot more than normal. But I ate half of a spaghetti squash that I cooked in bone broth, right? So I cooked the night before. I would cut a spaghetti squash in half, put it in a baking dish. I would cook it in bone broth. Then I would put tons of butter on it, so it's just a matrix to hold fat, right? And then I would bring that in a little container in my backpack because I would ride my bike to work to try to get more miles in because I was training for a race. And I'd put cottage cheese on top, right? So that had some good protein in it, a little bit of fat, but it was a low inflammation. Cottage cheese is a dairy that I recommend because it does not cause inflammation like other dairy, okay? So I put a little bit of cottage cheese on, and then I would eat huge bags of venison jerky, right? And the reason why is because I was super hungry and I didn't have time to cook because I was working as an engineer at the time. And so that's what I could carry in my backpack without refrigeration easiest, right? And so I'd get to work and I had a standing desk, and I still remember eating this huge container of spaghetti squash with cottage cheese, and I'd just be eating my jerky all day long. I had so much protein, and that was just before lunch, right? Then I'd take lunch and I would go eat kebabs at the local kebab place. There was a kebab, so just meat and vegetables and meat, right? Okay, and they would always serve it with rice, and I wouldn't eat that because I was trying to really lean up. Like I was really trying to lean up. But I'd eat as many vegetables as I wanted. Sometimes I'd have Brussels sprouts, the place, an extra vegetable I'd replace. Then I'd get home, ride my bike home, and then that's when I would eat my high carb meal. And I'm going to draw some pictures for you on the dry erase board. And then I would eat sometimes like a normal meal for me for that 6 months when I was leaning up. It would be like a tortilla, so that's carbs. And I would smear it with I'd make a Mexican pizza that I would put in my toaster oven. So beans, cheese, right? Black olives, pepperoni, whatever I wanted on this little Mexican pizza, and I'd put it in the toaster oven and eat the whole thing. And I'd be stuffed, right? I'd just eat as much as I wanted. If I had to have another one, I'd eat another one. I'd eat as much as I wanted. No caloric restriction at all, right? And then I would use a sauna. I had a little folding sauna, so I'd sit in Indian style in my folding sauna. So I was trying to build heat shock proteins for this race, but then that's not what's going to help you lose weight. I would do a cold plunge. So I'd fill my bathtub with cool water and do a cold plunge. That's increasing thermogenesis, right? So the cold water will help stimulate converting white adipose to brown adipose, and it will lower your metabolic rate, so you will burn way more calories. So what does that mean for you? It means end your showers on cold, right? End your showers on cold. Start with 10 seconds. It's going to be hard.
I just do cool, but I don't know about cold.
Cold as you can tolerate. And then eventually your body will get used to it, and like at first, I'll turn it on cold, right? And I'm just like, you know, like, okay, I'm cold, right? I'm like, got my leg, but no core, not right? It's really hard, right? So then you can finally get in and then you get out, okay, that's it, right? And then you'll get better at it. You'll be able to like increase it, right? And so it takes, just make it a habit. Try to just do a little bit longer cold, but you really only need about 30 to 60 seconds of cold. That's it, okay? And then get out and dry off, and your body's gonna be stimulated immediately to burn fat. It's going to burn fat, and it's going to convert your white adipose to brown. It's going to lower your homeostatic set point, okay? So what I was doing was full cold plunge. I would get in the bathtub, you know, and try to soak in there and get cold, right? Okay, but you can do a cold, just end your shower cold. Start with cool, you know, try to do it for 15 seconds. Then try to do it for 20 and 30. Once you can do a minute of cool, try a little colder, right? But you want your thermogenesis to be stimulated. It gets easier. It sounds horrible right now, but it actually gets easier, and it's totally free, and it has a huge amount of physiological benefits. Huge. Adrenal fatigue, chronic fatigue, all kinds of stuff goes away. Mental, it causes changes in your brain. I mean, it's just super, super good for you. But the main thing for this lecture is it will actually change your fat composition, and you will start dropping pounds without thinking about it. Right? Okay, so eat enough protein. How much protein is how much you should eat? Well, it's this, like I'm 120 pounds, you know, right now. You convert it to kilograms, multiply by 1.5, and that's my low end of protein that I need to eat as a menopausal woman, okay? Then if you take the same number, your weight in kilograms, multiply by 2, that's me on the high side. So if I'm gonna go on a hike for an hour, or do some, you know, I wanna be on 109 grams of protein. That's a lot more than a lot of people recommend, but this I found has been the most healthy. And I didn't make it up, you know, that's it right here. This is based on, this is exactly what I use. And so what does it look like? So, oh, I didn't put it in there, but one small piece of salmon, like you would put on a dinner plate, would be 20 grams. So I would eat 5 of those a day to be on my high side to build muscle mass, right? If I'm doing exercise, or 4, but remember, I'm not just going to eat salmon and that's going to be my only protein. Cottage cheese has protein. Beans have protein. You just got to start Googling and figuring out how am I getting my protein and am I getting enough. And once you figured out that you're getting enough, you got to make sure you're digesting it, right? And yes?
Don't mean to tangentialize or
No,
distract
go
or
for it.
anything, but cottage cheese and yogurt specifically.
Yes,
You
I'm a
recommend
big proponent of cottage cheese
whole
and yogurt.
milk
And
or low fat.
I'm always like, full of fat. Give me full of fat.
Okay, so
Never, ever, ever use low fat anything, because if you eat fat, it will help you burn fat, right? So always eat full of fat. Because there's also fillers in those low fat foods that I am really scared of. But I was like, where's the full of fat? You know, more fat. Where's 2%, 4%? Give me the, I mean, I always look for the fat, and I want the most fat as possible. And it works. And so another thing, I hadn't put in a slide in, so I'm going to draw it for you because this is the key. Okay, so we're going to talk about intermittent fasting and carb cycling a little bit later in this lecture, in about 5 or 10 minutes. But one slide I forgot to put in that's critical. Let's say, okay, hold on, let's find a different pen. Maybe one will work a little slower. Okay, good, that works. So let's say this is time t, this is 0, this is 24 hours, okay? Okay, so this is a day, one day, right? You need to try to restrict your feeding to a 6 to 8 hour window, okay? That's really key to training your metabolism to burn fat the way we want, okay? Now, it gets more complicated, but this is super key. So let's say you've decided for your body weight, you've done your ratio, and you know you need this much protein a day, right? And it's like, let's say it's this much protein, right? And you have this many carbs that you need, carbs, you need that many carbs, and you need this much fat, right? Whatever this much is, you've decided, okay? And I'll tell you what I recommend for weight loss in a second, but whatever it is, that's how much you need. Now, what happens is, at the beginning of your feeding window, okay, I want your protein is always going to be in the middle, meaning you can spread out your protein throughout the day, okay, however you want. Your fat, that's going to be black. So let me get my black pen. Okay, fat, most all of your fat should be eaten early in the day. So the beginning of your feeding window, and it should go like that. Okay? And then your carbs need to look like this. Your carbs are lowest at the beginning of your feeding window, and they go like that. And then the last meal of the day of your feeding window should be a high carb meal. Okay? So that's how you need to eat your macronutrients if you want to stimulate weight loss. And we'll talk about this a little bit more. Okay, so let's keep going. All right, so sleep, I should have put this slide earlier, but our sleep changes as we get older. Some of you have seen this one before. You need, in order for the sleep to be super effective at changing your hormones, you have to go into deep sleep. And we get deep sleep right here, this deep sleep when we're younger. It's really hard to get it when we're older unless we do things to promote it. And usually that means going to bed earlier. As we get older, a lot of people go to bed at midnight or 1 and then they wake up, you know, late and they're like, I still get my 7 to 8 hours, I just go to bed late and then I wake up late, right? That you're not going to get the sleep you need to help promote weight loss if you do that. I would recommend trying to go to bed earlier and waking up earlier, and that's going to change your circadian rhythms and retrain your hormones, and you're going to get more leptin, which is going to help you feel full so you don't look like the obese mice. Okay, so what can you do to help promote you going into deep sleep earlier, right? And that is glycine. If you can take a glycine powder, you will reach deep sleep sooner in your sleep cycles, and you'll get more of it as an older person. So where do we get glycine from? You can buy it as a powder. Put a little scoop, drink it in chamomile tea. It's very sweet, it tastes good. Glycine is simply a food, it's an amino acid, it's a peptide. It's from steak, it's in pork. You can get it from pork rinds, right? Pork rinds is the food that has the highest amount of glycine, so you can eat that. But that's going to help promote your sleep. Okay, how do I take it? I put it in a little cup of tea, chamomile tea, and I drink it before I go to bed, if I remember. And or you can take tablets as well. And I think did I bring them? Yeah. So sometimes when I'm feeling really lazy, before I go to bed, I'll take a glycine capsule, right? But you can make it pleasant and eat it as food if you put it in your chamomile tea because it tastes sweet, so it's delicious. Okay, so also you need to have a diverse microbiome, and that's not only will help you sleep, but that diversity will help you absorb your nutrients better to help change and regulate your hormones. So this is a probiotic that I sometimes take to help me sleep. It's called Sleep Balance, right? But you know, almost any probiotic will help, and you don't have to take it as a supplement. You can actually eat fermented foods, right? Any fermented live food like kefir and sauerkraut and kimchi, pickles if they're live pickles, right? Just incorporate live food into your diet, and it's going to change your microbiome. And when your microbiome in your gut changes, you're going to start changing how your hormones are regulated. And in the correct direction. Yes?
Tell me more about a live pickle.
Live pickles. So you can go to they have legs on them and they run from you. You have to catch them. So the pickles you go to the aisle that's not refrigerated and they got 1,000 pickles, right? Don't eat those. Okay, they're worthless. You need to go to the refrigerated section, and you'll see them in plastic containers a lot of times, and they'll say live right on them, and that means that the lacto-fermented bacteria are still living. And so they're very delicious, and they taste great, and I've tried to make them myself to abysmal failures many times, and so I'm still working on it. But the point is, you can buy them, people who know what they're doing, and usually that's where all the sauerkraut is in that section too, and there's some really good sauerkrauts now that are just delicious. You can get beet sauerkrauts and there's some delicious sauerkrauts. And they'll sell them in little Ziploc bag things with some, and try them. Just buy one and just eat a few bites. You don't need to eat the whole thing or a big serving. Just a couple bites a day as a snack. It's great.
You're about to break my heart.
I am.
But is the kraut in a can not good?
Not
either?
good. It's worthless. Absolutely worthless. But if you like the kraut in the can, fantastic. Because now it gives you a chance. I'm giving you permission to spend more money on a fancier sauerkraut. That's delicious. It's going to change your life. You got to do it for health reasons. Deb said so. Right? Okay. All right.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
When I eat sugar, I always feel like I don't sleep as well.
Yeah, that's what he was talking about.
Is that a myth?
No, he was talking about that in the little video clip. The Matthew guy, Walker, he even said it. If you eat carbs, and he had a picture of all the carbs, you won't sleep as well. So a lot of times to help people sleep, if they say they wake up, at a certain time, I can tell by when you wake up if you're having a liver detox problem, and there's things I would recommend. But a lot of times just eating a spoonful of almond butter or peanut butter before you go to bed, that fat and that protein will help you sleep really well.
Do you do that even after your window of the intermittent carb, or do you stop
You
at 8
shouldn't.
o'clock?
You shouldn't. But if you're having huge sleep problems, I would place sleep at a priority. So I would say cheat. you know, but don't eat the whole thing, the whole nut butter thing, you know. One spoonful, right? One heaping spoonful, eat it. I don't put it on a cracker, because that's carbs. Don't put it on a tortilla, use a spoon. And so like a Kirkland brand has a, Kirkland has a nut butter mix. Have you guys seen it? It's like it's all these different nuts combined into a nut butter. Oh my God. Oh my God, it's so good, right? And it comes in this giant thing at Costco. And so I have it, because insomnia is one of my issues, you know, sleep is my problem, my issue that I'm constantly trying. That's why I have all these sleep lectures on my YouTube channel, because I figured it out. But in my sleep medicinal area in my bathroom, I have a jar of Kirkland nut butter with a spoon. Right? Because if I think I'm gonna have a hard time sleeping, that's what I take. But for the most part, yeah, you need to try to keep it in your feeding window. Like you try to keep it in your feeding window. But if you are having recurrent bad sleep, you're gonna be working against yourself until you can solve your sleep problem. So do it.
So, once you decide when you start to eat for the day, so say you eat at 8, then I only have
6 to 8 hours.
6 to 8 hours from then, and then don't be eating at night or anything.
Right, so like when I tried to lean up for that race, that picture at the beginning, I was waking up early, you know, to go to work. And I would be on my bike, 7 a.m., take me an hour to ride to work. And I did, what I'm gonna go over, I did high intensity interval training to ride to work. So it was race to the stoplight, stop. Then race to the next stoplight, stop, right? It was very high intensity intervals. It wasn't a static, you know, easy, right? And that took me an hour. And then I would have my spaghetti squash, my cottage cheese, and my venison jerky, and I'd put it on my desk looking at it, you know, right? And I would wait till 11 a.m., right? So I would wait till 11, even though I had just ridden an hour, and I rode my butt off to get to work, right? I wouldn't eat anything till 11. Then 11 a.m., I would give myself permission to start eating, right? And then I'd eat whatever I wanted. And I mean, I ate till like crazy till I got home and had dinner, right? So then from 11, and so I would usually try to get home by 5, right? And I'd eat my dinner right away, and that's it. That's all of that would be my 6-hour feeding window, right? And I had lunch at work at the kebab place, right? You know, but you know, I would also leave work at 4, so that way it would take me an hour to ride my bike home. So I was doing a tremendous amount, 2 hours of high intensity interval training, and doing this restriction. And I was testing my ketones, which I'm going to talk to you later about, but I don't recommend it. It's not worth doing. I'm telling you what's going to happen now, so you don't have to do it. But I was checking my ketones, which ketones tell you if your body's burning fat. And I was checking them 3 ways and putting them on a spreadsheet because I'm an engineer. And I was checking them in my urine, I was checking them in my breath, which I have a ketone, 2 different ketone testers here you guys can look at, but this is what I used to breathe into. And I would check it on my computer, how the ketones in my breath, and then I was checking my ketones in my blood. So it looks like a blood glucometer, but I had special strips that would tell me what my ketones were in your blood. And this is a whole biomedical lecture that I'm not going to go into, because as you get good at burning ketones, that's burning fat for fuel, the urine strips become useless, right? And then the blood becomes more useful, but then even later that's not useful, and it really needs to be your breath. So anyway, so I tracked all that because I was trying to figure out how do I lose weight. Because I wanted to be able to race across America, 3,000 miles, and I needed to get lean for this race, right? So that was my objective. But you don't need to go to that extreme. I'm just telling you, try to keep your feeding window between 6 and 8 hours, and it will help a lot in retraining your metabolism. Okay, so let's keep going. Ghrelin, a lot of times if you drink water, it's your stomach expansion that triggers ghrelin, okay? Which is so it triggers it to stop. So what happens is if you can trick it by drinking a bunch of water or liquid or something like that, then the ghrelin will stop. Ghrelin I think of as like the hungry gremlin. Ghrelin, it's like, I'm hangry, right, okay? That's ghrelin. So when your stomach expands, then your appetite goes down, right? So you can make it expand in many different ways, right? You can drink a lot of water if you want to, right? So to hydrate, hydration's good. It will help you not be as hungry. Okay, so let's keep going. Okay, so this is also one of the most important slides in the slide presentation. So I said one earlier, here's the next one. These 2 things combined are key. Intermittent fasting, that is what I drew on the board is a daily intermittent fasting, the 6 to 8 hour window, okay? That's a daily. Now there's different kinds of intermittent fasting. I found that one to be the easiest to follow for the long term, okay? I still follow it to this day. I haven't had anything to eat yet, right? And interestingly, once you start training your body to do this, it becomes effortless. Like you don't even have to think about it anymore. At first, I remember looking at 11 a.m., but I was doing a lot of exercise before 11, right? But now I can even exercise, and unless I do high intensity interval training, I might get a little hungry, but usually I'm not hungry now till 1, right? I don't even get hungry till 1. And so I try to keep, then as soon as I'm hungry though, I eat, right? I eat but I try to eat fat. At the first time you eat in your feeding window, you have to eat fat, right? So an egg on top of spaghetti squash. I'll put an egg on top of spaghetti squash too. That was great. I sometimes add that with my cottage cheese. I forgot that. That was critical. And anything, and I sometimes drizzle olive oil over the whole thing too to put even more fat on it, right? You know, as much healthy fats as I can get on that first meal, the better. And the lowest carbohydrates. Try not to eat hardly any carbohydrates. And definitely stay away from fructose. In your first feeding, like let's say most people want to eat breakfast with the orange juice and toast, right? And that's the first thing they eat. You will not burn fat for 24 hours. You have just signaled your body to not burn fat. So even if you don't eat anything the rest of the day, you're not going to burn any fat, right? Because eating that fructose has an extreme physiological effect on your body, and you won't burn fat, right? You've just blown it, right? Which is horrible. So you don't want to blow it, right? So eat
So
fat.
I just blew it.
Yeah, don't eat. So oranges are great. I love oranges. Just eat them later in the day.
Okay.
Because they have fructose. It's a very healthy fructose. In terms of fructoses, oranges are great, right? But don't eat them at the first part of your feeding cycle. Eat them at the last part. So I will sometimes eat one of those small mandarin oranges at lunch. That will be my carb at lunch. Because normally at lunch, like today, what I would normally do is I eat, my first meal of the day is lunch, and I eat a big leafy green salad. And I pour olive oil all over it, or pistachio oil, or macadamia nut oil. I'm an oil freak because I love healthy fats, and so I have the most amazing selection of healthy oils, right? And they taste so good. Like pistachio oil, you gotta try it, it's so good. Anyway, and then I'll put sometimes a little bit of cottage cheese, that's a little bit of carbs, but not much. Or I'll put a little bit of Parmesan, which is a low-fat cheese, right? Or the soft mozzarella, that high quality, like white mozzarella, very low fat, but it doesn't matter, fat's not a big issue. Remember, it's more carbs you're trying to stay away from, but you can eat like one slice of that. And so a little bit of cheese, not a lot, okay? Definitely stay away from cheddar at lunchtime, you don't want cheddar, but a little bit of Parmesan, and then I'll put a nut on it. I always put a nut, so either pumpkin seeds or sunflower seeds or walnuts, some kind of nut goes on the salad. And then all the oils, and then a protein, whatever's left over from dinner last night, if there's pulled pork, or went to Buddy's last night, right, forgot Buddy's chicken, right? So we'll put some of that put that on the salad, right? So you want to have a protein, big leafy green salad, and I eat that every day. And the main reason why my family, we eat a big giant leafy green salad each day. We make it as huge as we want, no calorie restriction, eat it all, right? And I'm not a big salad fan, but I've learned to like it. An added benefit of eating a big dark leafy green salad every day is cognitive decline. It will prevent cognitive decline. It's called the MIND diet. It's the Mediterranean/DASH diet intervention. And so if you look up MIND diet, one of the biggest components of the MIND diet for cognitive health is eating a big leafy green salad each day. So I just made that. It makes it easy to know what you're going to eat for lunch every day. You're going to eat the salad. The difference is what's the nut, what's the protein, what's the oil. Like you mix it up with all these different things. And so that's what I eat for lunch, which is very, very low carb, right? But sometimes I don't think the protein I put on is enough, so I'll go get more protein, get some more meat from my refrigerator, and make sure that I'm full. The objective is to be where you can't even, like you are stuffed, you're super full. Then my dinner's where I would eat any carbs that I'm going to eat, right? So that's where I'm going to have, like, I don't, if weight loss is your goal, I don't recommend, like, potatoes or rice at all, unless it's a carb cycling day, and I'm going to talk about that. If you're on your low carb day, I would eat, like, we do mashed rutabagas instead of mashed potatoes. They're delicious. They're so good. So get a rutabaga from Walmart. Walmart's been selling them. They're huge, ugly looking things, pink, and you peel them and then you boil them and chop them up like you would a potato, and then you mash them up and just put tons of grass-fed butter all over it, fat, really good, olive oil or something, and then season them like you would a mashed potato, and they taste delicious, right? So if you make a meatloaf, you can have a meatloaf, right? try not to put the breadcrumbs in it though, just use something else. Maybe I sometimes will use a ground chia seed or a ground flax seed that as a binder for the meatloaf, right? And then, which gives you prebiotic fiber, which is great for your microbiome. And then make a big giant thing of mashed rutabaga. It tastes like you're eating meatloaf and mashed potatoes. So you're not, and then make some green beans or something. You can have some, you can even have more carbs in that, like a tortilla. Like I said, I've had a tortilla. But make the carbs as nutritious as possible and make almost all your carb eating in your last part of the day, okay? So then after dinner, for a snack or for, a dessert, eat a big bowl of berries with whipped cream on them. That would be fantastic. That's a great, high, because that's fructose, because they're berries. You can eat your oranges then. That would be a great time to do it. And then, the way I recommend it is every 2 to 3 days, so every 2 to 3 days, do the intermittent fasting the way I'm describing, and then have I call it a cheat day, but I wouldn't even call it a cheat day, it's just part of the program. Then have a high carb day, where you're not worried about the carbs at all, you're just eating carbs however you want, but as nutritious as possible, right? And that's gonna help train your body to not be in starvation mode, right? That's what's gonna create that flexibility, so that way you'll be able to burn fat easier. So 2 to 3 days following this, 1 day eating carbs, right? Healthy carbs, healthy as you can. But it might be a day where you're gonna have to, go get pizza or something, like whatever. You gotta be human. so try to, plan it so that way, and some of these carb days are not planned. Like you're somewhere and like you're at the church and there's a potluck and you eat it, right? That's your high carb day now. You've just decided. So now, the next day, it's critical that the day after you have high carbs is a low carb day, is following that, right? That's the most important day, is the very next day, right? So, don't wait, say, oh, well, I fell off the wagon, so I might as well just eat more carbs tomorrow. No, in fact, the next day is the most important to get back on the wagon, and then if you fall off again. I don't plan my cheat days very much anymore. I just do it naturally, right? Things come up in life, and then I'm like, oh, well, today was a high carb day, and my parents were all laughing, yep, today's high carb day, well, tomorrow we'll get back on the wagon, right? And then we do, right? So, but just remember, don't feel guilty about those higher carb days. Just keep in mind, it's all about understanding how to change your physiology, right? So just remember, if you had a high carb day, now the next day you got to do your intermittent fasting again, and lots of fats, healthy fats. Okay, so we're going to keep going. These are two great books you can look at that talks about how to do it, and they're fantastic. Okay, and see, if you look at this picture, this is the feeding window, right? That's that 6 to 8 hour feeding window I was talking about. They're showing 8 hours right here, right? 24-hour day, this is 8 hours approximately. And, okay, so let's keep going. So now we got to maximize our micronutrient content. Because remember, a lot of people have cravings because they're not getting something their body needs. So I cheat and I get this and make sure I'm getting it all, right? That has choline and all kinds of other stuff. But these are 3 vitamins you want to make sure you're getting. And they will help you lose weight. Iodine's going to nourish your thyroid, and if it's in a food form, and it will help you have a higher metabolism, a higher set point. So you want to make sure you don't have a sluggish thyroid, and if you need to see a naturopath to go into more detail and look at your blood work, that can be done too.
With the seaweed, Deborah, I noticed at Costco, they sell like these.
The flakes?
It's like
Snack,
a
yeah, I love them.
Are those good?
Yeah, I
Oh,
recommend
okay.
them to my sister, to everybody, they're
Okay.
great. But some people, remember this is for educational purposes only, and there are people who have thyroid issues, and so you need to make sure it's right for you. If you have weird thyroid hormone issues, I would need to look, your doctor or someone would need to look at it more closely to make sure you're not overdosing on the iodine. One way, naturopaths, we are taught to check at home to see if you're iodine deficient is you can get that brown iodine from Walmart, put some on a cotton ball, right? Usually right over your liver or something. You go like this, right? Put a bunch of it, so your skin's gonna turn brown. You can do it on your face if you want, but then you're gonna look like a goofball. Anyway, so put it somewhere where, you don't want to see it. It'll stain your skin. And if it's still there 24 hours later, you can still see a hint of it, you're not iodine deficient, right? So you don't need to increase your iodine. Now, if it starts fading, if 24 hours later you can't see any evidence of it at all, then you probably need some more iodine in your diet.
Right.
Now, what happens is for me, most of the time, within 4 hours, so I'm checking it every hour, right, and it's usually already dissipating, right? Which means I have a tendency to be on the lower iodine side, which means my thyroid could probably use some extra iodine. So I try to use food. Those seaweed snacks are great that you're talking about. Okay, so those are nuts. I highly recommend you start liking nuts. They're a great source of protein, fat. I usually have whole jars of them on the counter, and we switch them up. But there's always walnuts. Brazil nuts are fantastic. I recommend everybody eat Brazil nuts. 3 a day is max, because they have such a high selenium content that you can overdose on it. But 3 a day is fantastic for cancer prevention and other things. Yes?
I was told to soak the Brazil nuts.
I would recommend soaking them.
Okay.
I'm sure there's many schools of thoughts on that. Some people have said also soaking cashews, and that's another one that's not necessary to soak. But I always soak almonds and a lot of other seeds. But I don't soak the Brazil nuts, and we can talk about that later, because we got more to cover. All right, so these are some great weight loss foods. I wouldn't be eating the rice unless it's one of my high carb days, right, where I'm not worried about carbs as much. And if I did eat the rice, it would be a brown rice, because it's more nutrients. But these are great. Like, this is mashed garbanzo beans. You just heat them up and then mash them, and then you can put an egg on top and some corn kernels, and like that would be a great meal that is super nutrient dense, that will fill you up. Pour olive oil over the whole thing though. Yes?
Are garbanzo beans in a can okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I put the can right there. Yeah.
Check.
Now, do you count those as protein or do you
Yeah.
count those as carbs?
I count